speaking of cool stuff, AirCorps Aviation, Stefan, tell this audience who and what AirCorps is, because there's some very cool stuff going on there. Speaking of toys.
That's right. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so AirCorps Aviation, for maybe those who maybe know a little bit about them, or us, is that we're a historical World War II era aircraft restoration shop. And so we typically are rebuilding historical aircraft, and what grew out of that, though, was a fabrication shop and several other services to support legacy aircraft. But in particular, why I'm here, it's because the fabrication shop that grew out of the necessity to restore aircraft really provides a lot of services, CNC machining, sheet metal forming, heat treating, things like that really apply to the larger
instrument panel from hell.
Yeah, right. Yeah, any all those things are applicable to the larger aviation industry. So we expanded our services beyond just a restoration company into support for aviation, other aviation industries.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's got to be a fascinating process, and yeah, the skill sets involved. I've watched a number of folks in that community. Tom Riley is a friend, and I used to hang with him all the time out back in the Kissimmee days, and just watching what they had to do to fabricate something that hadn't existed for 40, 50, 60 years was extraordinary.
Right.
So the skill set that you're building and its transference, if you will, to the rest of aviation has to be manna from heaven to companies out here who don't know how to get, okay, we've got an oddball King Air panel, but we're putting in this set of displays, but on this side we're doing this, that, and there's nothing that fits.
Right.
Sounds like a job made for, oh yeah, what was your name again?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, and that's exactly, so one of the tools that we invested in to help with the reverse engineering of parts is a laser scanner, and so that's one of the services we provide. Again, the ability to go into an existing area, fuselage, cab, or whatever, and reverse engineer off of that and develop CAD models, and that can be used kind of to go directly into fabrication or springboard an engineering effort for an STC modification of an aircraft.
Where are the surprises in all this? What have you learned from branching out from rebuilding pieces of history to working with modern aircraft and companies and technologies?
Yeah, well, I guess what we've learned is that a lot of the processes to manufacture or fabricate a part are still tried and true, meaning that I often still get the question like, are you 3D printing parts? Are you using 3D printing as a process to manufacture new aircraft parts? And the answer is really no.
Ain't there yet.
It's not there yet. The processes that have been used for decades now to engineer and design parts for aircraft are tried and true, and there's still a demand for that. And while 3D printing, no doubt, is in the future, it's still not a practical solution for most parts.
Yeah, at the moment, its best value is prototyping.
Right.
But as far as end use, not yet.
Not an airworthy part, right?
No, not yet. It's going to take a while, and more important, it's going to take even longer for the FAA to get with the program.
Agreed. Yes.
So somebody comes to you with a unique project. How does that process work?
Yeah. So we typically ask what information, what kind of data are we starting with, right? Do you have original drawings, or do you have engineering data that can kind of springboard a project into simply saying, if you have a blueprint, let's call it, we can take a look at that and quote that right off of that. If not, then it's okay. Well, yeah, do we need to come in and laser scan and help you engineer a solution to ultimately get to a part that you want to manufacture? Yeah.
Sounds like a process. What kind of technologies are you using here? How do you take what you've learned in rebuilding the historical generation? You mentioned laser scanning, things of that nature. What kind of technologies are coming to fore here, and what will you be using in the future? What are you particularly excited about?
Yeah. Well, so a lot of the parts that we manufacture for the historical aircraft are are based, or we use the original data that was produced by the OEM. We have, luckily, that data was preserved during World War II, and we have access to that information. So we build the parts to those prints. Now, there's sometimes where the parts, or the alloys, the materials, the specifications for those materials are obsolete per se. So we invoke the help of engineers to do a substantiation, crossover to a modern equivalent, and look for some other materials to make those parts out of. But in terms of technology, again, the laser scanning is really the primary tool we use, because again, it's such a powerful tool for measuring, really. That's what it is. It's a measurement tool. And often even still, when a drawing may provide dimensional information on it, it may be incomplete. And so having the ability to, or the part was changed in a later revision, and we don't have a copy of that drawing. So the laser scanning really lets us bridge that difference between an existing part in a real world situation, what was made versus what was intended to be made.
I would imagine the FAA interface on this must be fascinating, because, I mean, one thing in the warbird community, parts approvals are kind of a joke anyway, because everything was at best mil spec. But when you jump from there to creating parts out of, from scratch, so to speak, for the current certificated community, that's a whole, that takes field approvals to another level, to say the least. How do they react to that? What kind of relationship have you had to build, and what kind of problems are you encountering, or challenges, I should say, in working out the certification process for every project?
Yeah. Well, often I think what you're probably speaking to is the owner-produced parts side of the certification process. And again, we as a manufacturer or a fabricator of the part, it's not in our position to specify or to decide what the customer, the end user, or who's going to conform the part ultimately. So we can work with, it's important that as the rule is written, the person who is conforming the part to be installed on the aircraft, the onus is really in their court to decide and to make sure that they're following the rules to conform the part. We are just working with them to ultimately make exactly what they decide.
Going back for a second to the historical aspect, how did you get into that? How was the company created? Where was the need? Where was the genesis of all that? That has to be an interesting story.
Yeah, right. So it actually started with my brother, Eric, who was an AMP and AI, and he was working for a charter business as an AMP, and kind of happenstance met someone who had an uncle who had a P-40 Warhawk and was looking for someone to help
there's
him.
A name drop.
Yeah, and was looking for someone to restore it, and Eric was young and ambitious and decided to move out to the location where the aircraft was, and started rebuilding this P-40 Warhawk. And through that, long story short, was just networked and met a lot of other great people in the warbird industry, and was able to start AirCorps Aviation with 3 other partners and produce it a really neat diversified company now that has a little over 50 people working at it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My next question is just how big this thing has grown. Any interesting projects that come to mind? Yeah,
well,
you guys got to play some great toys.
We do. Again, it's great to hear the hearsay about this new project or new aircraft that's going to be coming through. It's really fun. And most recently, P-47 Thunderbolt we just completed. And
so my heart.
Yeah, it is a beautiful aircraft. That was a 4-year plus restoration project. And then we're starting a P-38 Lightning next, so that's another.
If you're bringing a Lightning back to life, manna from heaven. That's one of the most extraordinary airplanes ever built.
Yes, no doubt.
I had a long chat with the late, great, phenomenal Lefty Gardner, who just gave me the greatest lecture on how this thing really flies in the company, hanging with Bob Hoover at the time, and we're trading information and this, that, and the other, and he talked about stuff that airplane could do that was just unheard of at the time. And of course, Bob demonstrated it on a number of occasions, and showed the airplane to be able to do things that everybody, oh, you can't do that. No, and he went out and did it and just made everybody look stupid.
All right.
Bob was good at that. So it was phenomenal. So what's the timeline on that project?
Yeah, it's just kind of kicking off right now. Again, a lot of our projects, and one of the things, maybe coming back to your question about technology again, one thing that our shop really leverages the power of is the modern manufacturing process, in that parts are made from CAD models, right?
Okay.
So years ago there was a lot of other restoration shops. It was more hand making. The guys had talented skills to enable them to look at something and then shape that part out by hand. Now we're using the power of a CAD program to model that part, model the entire airframe, build an assembly, and then build tools and things like that to support making those types of parts and output them. So anyways, long story short about the P-38, it's just in its infancy of CAD development right now. That'll take years of time really, but fabrication will be starting. In fact, we have started some of the fabrication kind of in conjunction. So it's going to be a multi-year effort, no doubt.
Of course. How much of an airplane are you starting with?
Yeah, very little. Yeah, it was there.
Okay.
There was. Yeah, there's.
I got a data plate.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. And that's really what I think you'll find fascinating. Hopefully this summer at Oshkosh, for example, our P-47 will be there. I mean, that thing.
You have to give me a tour. You realize that?
Yes,
that was
no
part
doubt.
of the gig here.
Yeah. Okay.
Give me a tour. Or no more interviews. No more. We don't talk to you anymore.
Right.
We got it. We got
Yes,
to
no doubt.
touch it at least once, tenderly.
Sounds good.
Oh my goodness, that's going to be great. Any other projects of note?
Yeah. There's more Mustangs in the shop.
Can't have enough Mustangs.
Yeah, not enough Mustangs. One of them of note has historical significance in that it was owned by Jimmy Stewart. It's the Air Racer Thunderbird that Jackie Cochran flew.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so we're rebuilding that, and then there's another European theater Mustang that was shot down in France that we're rebuilding that too. So, yep, there's a lot of action in our restoration shop right now.
Making a lot of something out of very little, apparently.
Correct. Yep.
Seriously, God's work.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate it.
extraordinary. I'll tell you what, we'll have to get together at Oshkosh, see what you're doing. Please keep us up to date.
Yes.
You got my card.
Okay.
Make sure you let me know what's happening, because it's all news and it's cool. And
yes.
Especially with some of our video programming, I know people would love to see these things as they come together.
No doubt.
That'll be fascinating.
Okay.
Where can people get more information on AirCorps?
Yeah. I would say at our website, aircorpsaviation.com. There's some specific landing pages there where you can find information specific to each one of these restorations, and there's a landing page for fabrication and all these other special services again that we provide.
You also have quite a repository of documentation on these aircraft. I remember
we do
a couple of pieces a few years back where you were talking about what you'd built up, and
yes,
man, I'd just like to go leafing through some of that.
Yes. Yeah, and really the most fascinating one is the Ken Jungebird collection, which is the original North American drawings. Ken was a draftsman at North American, and later decades after World War II, he was able to acquire those drawings, and he's graciously donated us those drawings, and so we have those in our collection. And we're planning a traveling exhibit with some of those original North American drawings. And so, again, if you'll be at Oshkosh this summer, we're going to have an exhibit there, and you'll be able to see these original North American drawings.
We got to talk, buddy.
Yeah.
We got to talk. Stefan, thank you so
good.
much.
Thanks, Jim.
My great appreciation for joining us.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 66th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Orlando, Florida, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors: